How's it going? Alright, so this is gonna be video kind of for myself, so the quality is not gonna be very good, but I'll be explaining it, so maybe you will get some benefit. So in the store config, when you're running anything through store, right, there is an action, there is a type, and you can set up a middleware which will listen, and if that specific type gets triggered, you can do stuff like in between I'm talking about, right? Now in our project we're using it, so I'm just explaining how it works. All right, so I'm gonna link this in the description below, so it's kind of like, it's not really super docs, but it explains how it works. It's very simple, like it's just, once I'll explain it to you, like it's extremely simple. And then in here you have the official docs, which is, I don't know, honestly, Redux Toolkit docs, not a big fan. My explainers is going to be here. So that's your official docs. Let me just do it this way. Oh my god. I probably should have done it. Okay, anyway. So let me just explain it. Alright, so you're probably gonna have, that's gonna be a store. We're just gonna ignore this. So you will not have this. Whoopsie. Just pay attention to what I'm deleting, because that's exactly what you need to add to make this thing work. Okay, so that's probably gonna be your... Let me just save this for a sec. Okay, so this is like a typical store setup with a persister. You can ignore persister, forget about that it exists. You're gonna have store that looks kind of like this. And this, we're gonna use this as a count slice. Just so basically set up a store where you have count that increases by 1, decreases by 1, and then increase by an amount. So I don't know, in my case it's 10. And then I have also array where you push stuff into the array. Okay? So now let's set up a listener. So the first thing we do is we need to make sure we import this thing here. Again, it's going to be in the Word document, right? So create listener, then we do const listener middleware equals, and this is a function, so we need to run it. It's basically like a hook. Okay. If you ever used Angular.js, this is literally the same thing. It's like it works exactly the same. So we just start listening. Okay, this is a function. So we do a function, and then inside we have an object, and that's where all the magic happens. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to show you is how do you listen to every single action. So every single action is predicate. You don't probably need. And then true. I wonder if it's going to well, okay. We'll try without arguments first. And then effect. Effect is like action, which is any, and then listener API. Now this thing, honestly, this is conventional names. This is basically, you can call this slice object, probably. Honestly, this would be like the most correct name, because what this thing is, it's identical to this. Because inside of this, it's not completely identical, but it performs a lot of similar actions. Like you have dispatch in it, you have actions in it. So this thing, you can kind of think about this thing and this thing as being the same. But I'm gonna call it slice object for now, so we don't get confused. And then I'm gonna change the name to whatever is in the docs, in the actual docs. It's just that for explanation purposes, it's much easier, right? Okay, so now we want to put console log, so action is going to be here. So action is the thing that... action is basically identical to this thing here. Okay? Again, because you're using slice object, you have access to the state. Actually, this is not a slice object, my apologies. This is more like a full store. This is more like a full store, probably. Because to access each slice, you have to go through the... reducers. So you see, if you want to access count slice states, you have to go full store, then whatever is in here, and then... But I'll show you. And so this is a full store. Okay, so the final step is you need to make sure that you add... You see here we have middleware. This part here, you set it up when you're doing your persister, but you probably will not have it. So you're just gonna have to copy and paste it, honestly. And for you probably do not need this part, because you don't have a persister. So you probably can delete this. You're probably gonna look... Your one is probably gonna look something like this. But anyway, in docs you can find the correct way to do it. Okay. So here we type prepend. And then we want this one. And then dot middleware. Whoops. Like this. So now it's going to work. Okay. Hold on a sec. Yeah, so you see every time you perform any action, it's going to trigger. Hold on a sec. Let me just make it a bit clearer. Like so. Now, as you can see, my store is not losing its values because I have a persister set up. But you see, like every time there's some kind of an action happening, you get you see which, for example, which API, well, which slice and what action has been performed. You see, count slice, decrease count has been performed. So let's say we want to add, right? So what's going to happen when we click add? Increase count has been called. So what happened was this has been called. Alright, so in this case, okay, if you say, okay, I don't want to listen to everything, I just want to listen to specific type. Okay, so it's very simple. Type, and then in here you want the name, which comes from here, not from the const, but from the name. And then again, it's exactly the same as action. Remember, each action has type and payload. So this syntax is exactly the same, because syntax for type is name of the slice and then / one of those, whichever action it is. I mean, they're called actions, but they're really just functions to change the store state. So let's listen to, let's make it simple, just to increase count, okay? Decrease count, let's just listen to decrease count. Okay. Alright. Now we are increasing, nothing happens. Adding, nothing happens. Add to array, nothing happens. But decrease, boom, there it is, you see? This is the action, and this is the full store. So you can see we have dispatch in here. We can get state. Now state is gonna be the entire store. Now in your case it's probably gonna be here, reducers. In my case it's in here because it's a persister. Bottom line, state in here is the entire store. And I can show it to you, like for example, let's say we want to console log store state, which is going to be full store dot get state. So let's have a look. So we're decreasing. Okay, so there it is. You see, these are all the count. You see, count slice states. So there they are. You see. So in here we are referring to this thing here. All right. Boom, 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 boom. All right. One thing I want to beware when you are using predicate. So beware when you're using this with every single store update, dispatch, basically, right? Because this thing triggers on every dispatch. All right. So in here, what we can do is we can actually, okay, so let's have a use case where we want to add count 1 and add to the array. So every time this gets triggered, we want to add 1 to count as well. So how do we do it? So we're going to listen to our add stuff, and then we're going to, remember in here we have a dispatch function, right? So it's going to be full store dot dispatch, and then standard code for the slice. So remember, where's our slice? Our slice is, so dispatch count slice, which is here, action increase count. So we just literally want this part here. Now this count slice is already imported because I just imported it full slice basically. So now you see we can utilize dispatches from here as well. That's what I'm saying, is that you see, because it runs, this function runs on every dispatch. So if you have monitor every dispatch, you will create an infinite loop, and your Chrome browser after 5 minutes is going to explode. You're going to run out of memory. I learned it the hard way. I completely forgot about it, but then, boom. Anyway, so what's going to happen now? Normally, when we add to array, count does not increase, but in this case it will. So do you see? It increased as well. even though the code so you see we're adding to array, it simply adds to array. But because we created listener, we are also dispatching this one here. So you get kind of like this double effect, I suppose. Well, let me just show you that nothing happens normally. So you see if we just refresh, we add to array, count is not increasing. The only way to increase count is to click on add count, right? But if we can do it in the middleware, so we can do it just in here. So now you see count is also increasing. You can basically do anything in here, like this is just straight up a function. Now the only thing, be aware, do not return anything, because if you return something, it will blow up your application. Okay, boom, it's not going to work, you see. So that's one thing you have to be aware of. All right, so make sure you do not return anything from this thing. And the second thing, you cannot directly, because I had an idea, okay, can I actually just mess around with the payload? Because let's say, okay, in my case, when I click on increase count by amount, in my dispatch, it's 10. So I was like, okay, can I manipulate the payload so that originally it was 10, and then I can just make it 15, 1-5, right? And the answer to that is no, you cannot. Like, I didn't do a lot of research. Maybe you can, maybe you can hack it, maybe it's standard to be able to do it, but I did not find a straightforward way to do it, right? So you see, if you have add 10, it increases by 10. So you can see the payload in here. Naturally, so we can say action.payload equals to 15. But again, because we're not returning anything, nothing is going to happen. So you see this was increasing by 10, and it will continue to increase by 10. So you see, oh, whoops. Let me just get the equal number, okay. You see, even though in the middleware we added payload as 15, it still doesn't work. If you want to do some weird stuff like this, you probably want to create a separate dispatch, well, separate action, whatever you want to call it, reducer action or whatever you want to call it, that will change this number and then dispatch it like this, you know. And honestly, that's about it. There is really nothing super complicated about this thing. The only thing is, I called it full store, but realistically, people call it listener API, which is like the correct name for it. That's about it. Okay, so let's just let me just reiterate. Well, sum it up. Oh, whoopsie. Okay, so first of all, you need to import this thing. Then you create your variable. And this variable is, you can add multiples, right? So you can start listening to another one. You can stack them unlimited number of times if you want more than one listener. Okay, so once you start listening, you create an object with either predicate, which is everything, listen to every single dispatch, or singular, which is type, and the way you set it up is count slice name, which comes from here, / whatever action it is. Then next you have effect. Action is exactly the same as this. So it has type and a payload. And then listener API is basically your entire store. And inside the store you can have stuff like get state or dispatch. And dispatch is exactly the same as this thing here. And then that's about it. So then you need to make sure, remember to add this thing. You need to set up basically this stuff here. For you, you do not need this part, so for you it will look something like this probably. In your case, because you don't have a... Yeah, that's probably... It should be in docs, right? Yeah, it's literally in here. Like you just copy and paste from here. You see this part here, middleware. So that's your store, that's your reducers, and that's your middleware. So you just need this part. So copy and paste it here, and then that's it. It should work. So important things are, if you have predicate, make sure you do not dispatch anything. Otherwise, you will crash your browser because it's an infinite loop. Can you manipulate payload directly from here? No, you cannot. You can only dispatch functions. Well, you can only dispatch from here, but not directly. But again, you see, you should never dispatch this from here because, again, you're going to have an infinite loop. So just be aware of this, okay? That's it. Take care. Bye-bye.